Hello everyone, and welcome to Waffle Flower Crafts. It's Shannon here, and in today's technique video I'll be showing you one of my favorite techniques. We're going to be making basic shapes by grouping stamps together. I'm going to be using several enveloper stamp sets. These were all illustrated by Helen Dardick. I really love them. First up is Enveloper Choice. I love the little kitty and lion. I'm going to be using that kitty as my central image today. This is Enveloper From. I'll be using several of the tiny stamps from this set. I'll also be using just a butterfly here from Enveloper Little Birdie. This is one of the newer ones. This is Enveloper Listen. I'll be using some flowers from that set. And then finally, this is Enveloper Birthday. I'll be using a flower and butterfly from this set. Basically, I'm just gathering a bunch of like images together in and I definitely need some small stamps to do this. So I have a A2 panel here of just some white cardstock. It is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. I'm going to mark the center line right down the middle using a T ruler, and then on one of the halves I'm going to sketch out half of a heart. Basically right now I'm creating my template, and I will use this template as a guide for shaping or grouping, I should say, my stamps. I'm going to fold it in half and then cut it, the half of the heart that I traced, with a pair of scissors, and this will just create the exact same. I'll get a perfect heart, a perfectly symmetrical heart by doing this. Of course, if you had a die, you could definitely create this template with a die instead. I don't have a die that's quite the right size for an A2 panel, so I'm making my own heart instead of die cutting one. So now that I've got my template done, I'm going to center it here on a top folding pink card base. This is an A2 card base, so it is 4 1/4 by 8 or by 11, and then it's scored at 5 1/2. And I'm going to now start pulling off some of the stamps that I'm going to use from all these enveloper stamp sets. So pulling off some of the flowers here from the Enveloper Listen. Here's the Enveloper Choice. I'm going to pull off that kitty from that set. And here's Enveloper Birthday, just pulling off a flower and a butterfly. And now I'm going to start taking these stamps and arranging them within this template that I created to kind of help me. I'm using it as a guide to help me make a heart shape. So I'm just going to arrange them around. You definitely are going to need, if you want to give this technique a try, you're definitely going to need to make sure you have some small stamps. So that's why I'm using so many stamp sets, because not all the stamp sets have tiny stamps. So I'm now arranging those stamps around, and I'm now going to take some of the tiny stamps here and kind of fill in some of the gaps. So I'm filling in some of the negative space here in this heart. Now, of course, I'm making a heart today, but you can make lots of different shapes. I've even made you can do circles or rectangles, something simple like that. I've even done I sketched out a fish, a goldfish, kind of like the goldfish crackers, and filled that with a bunch of kind of ocean themed stamps. You could definitely do like a tree, a very simple tree, a Christmas tree, and do Christmas stamps. You can do an ornament and do Christmas stamps in that. There's lots of different simple shapes you can do, and you can group your stamps together to create it, and it's just a really cool kind of graphic look. So now that I've got my stamps all arranged, I'm going to ink them up in a Distress Oxide. I'm using Candied Apple today. And I am using my Misty today, but you do not need a Misty to do this technique. I'm really only using my Misty because I want to stamp these stamps a couple of times so I get a nice, clean, crisp image. But you can definitely just use acrylic blocks to do this as well. And I think I'll ink it up one more time here just to make sure I am getting it nice and dark. And now that's my first initial stamping. Now I'm going to clean off these stamps, and I'm going to use some of those smaller stamps again, and I'm going to use them to help fill in this heart a little bit more, because right now it's kind of not really reading like a heart. It's not quite there. And I'm going to put my template back on here and then use it as a guide again to help me see the negative spaces where I kind of need to fill in a little bit with some of those smaller stamps. And I'm going to use the same small ones that I used earlier. I'm just going to pull them off of my Misty here, reposition them where there's a negative space, so anywhere there's pink, I'm going to kind of fill it in. And this is just going to really help to fill out this heart and really create that heart shape. So I'm continuing to fill out this heart here, and once I get most of the, and there's also some little butterflies that I'm using as well to kind of fill in. So you definitely need some smaller stamps to help you fill out, but that being said, you can use markers, which is what I'm going to do too, just to improve it even more. You can use markers to help fill out the negative space too, and I will show you that because I will do that to this card as well. So I'm going to continue to stamp some of these smaller stamps a couple more times. So I'm going to have stamped them a second time now. Now I'm going to rearrange them for a third stamping. I think I even do 4 total. But before I do this third regrouping of those tiny stamps, I've decided to go ahead and sketch in that, or trace that heart onto my card base. I avoided doing it before because I didn't want to have all those pencil lines and then possibly get some of the pencil lines trapped under the ink. Sometimes if you stamp on top of pencil, you can't erase the pencil that's under the ink. So I avoided it earlier, but because I'm kind of going past my template a little bit, my stamps are a little bit, I'm making a slightly bigger heart than my template. It was just kind of getting in the way, my template was. So I've just traced it now, and now I can kind of work without it. So you can definitely start with just tracing. You know, if you even had a die, you could just trace the die as opposed to even die cutting and making a template. But I just wanted to avoid getting a lot of pencil on my card base. I will erase, after this is all dry, that pencil mark once I've finished filling in my heart. Okay, so I finished stamping, filling in as much as I want to do with my stamping. I'm going to now heat set this because this is Distress Oxide, which is kind of like a pigment, similar in a pigment ink in the sense that it is wet longer. So I dried it just with my heat gun, and now I don't have to worry about smearing the images at all. So I'm taking a Copic marker here that's the same shade as this Candied Apple, Distress Oxide, and I am filling in the negative spaces even more with just dots. I'm making simple dots all over and filling in all those negative spaces. I still have the pencil lines here to kind of help me, and I'm using as a guide to see where I need to fill in, like especially all the way up to the edge. And it goes rather quickly, and you can just really see, boom, how this is really completing the heart. And you really are like, you can really see the heart now. So that's pretty much done. Now I'm going to erase those pencil marks because I'm done filling it in. I don't need the pencil marks any longer. And I'm going to move on to my sentiment. I'll just hold it up here so you can see, really pretty. I love how kind of clean and graphic it is. So now I'm going to use my MISTI to stamp the sentiment. I'm going to use, but before I do that, since I'm going to do some heat embossing, and this is a lot of ink, I'm going to really heat set this one more time just to make sure that all my ink is dry, and then I will do my heat embossing on top. Because if any of the images or even the marker areas are wet still, my embossing powder will stick to those areas, and I only want my embossing powder to stick to my sentiment. I'm going to choose a sentiment from the enveloper choice. It says, I choose you. I'm just going to place it on the lower portion of my heart. Once I get it exactly where I want, I'm going to fold my MISTI over, and I will pick it up. Then I will ink it up with Versamark. First I'll put some anti-static powder down just to also make sure that that embossing powder only sticks to the sentiment and nothing else. Inking it up with Versamark, I will ink it up and stamp it twice just to make sure I have the sentiment completely inked up and it's nice and crisp. So I'm inking it up the second time here and stamping it one more time. Now I'll pull my card out of my MISTI, and then I will pour on some white embossing powder. And then once I'm finished pouring on, I will tap off the excess, and then I will heat set it, and I'll kind of cut forward here. So just pouring on the powder, tapping off the excess, and then I will heat set it with my heat gun. Now that that is completely heat set, I'm ready to do one final step. You definitely don't have to do this. You could have stopped right here, but I am going to, after I kind of wipe off that anti-static powder, I'm going to take my gel pen, my white gel pen here, and just add in some white, not really highlights, but just some kind of coloring in with the white gel pen some areas of the images, like the cat's eyes. I'm going to color in some of the flowers and the leaves here, just a little bit, not coloring in everything, but just coloring in little portions here and there. And this just kind of incorporates that white that I heat embossed the sentiment in. It brings that sentiment in, and it also adds a little bit of pop here and there. And just moving, I've done this before with Helen sets. I really like, it's just a small little accent that you can do that I think really just kind of makes the images pop even more. So I'm going to continue to work around here. I'm almost done. I'm just going to finish up a little bit more of the flowers, and I'm just using a Jelly Roll white gel pen here, nothing really fancy, and it's very easy to use. I every once in a while I will have to kind of clean my tip here. I just clean it with my fingers because sometimes it gets gummed up a little bit with the ink, the Jelly Roll ink, and that's it. So just a little bit of white, I think, just really makes it pop. And I'll hold up to the camera so you can see a little bit better. They're just a little bit of details, and I think it really adds a little bit more. And it definitely incorporates that sentiment a little bit better. And I did, of course, make one more that I'm pulling over here, and I'll show the two together. So that's the one I made first. I hope you guys enjoyed this video today. If you want any more information on the products I used, please visit waffleflower.com, and you can follow us on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook for more creative ideas. Thanks for watching, and have a wonderful day.